COVID-19. Lockdown. President Trump, Boris Johnson. Oh, the Eurovision Song Contest has been cancelled. Oh, news. It's just everywhere. Oh, hi. It's so lovely to see you again. I'm so glad you interrupted me. I was reading the newspaper. It was all such bad news. Just everywhere, on the television, on the radio, things, articles, photographs. Quite often at the moment, the news is just not very nice, is it? You know, there's COVID-19, there's been a bomb, a flood, there's a war somewhere, somebody's hurt somebody else, somebody's been robbed. It's just not very nice, is it? You might overhear your grown-ups talking about it, or you might see something on the television that really worries you, or it's quite frightening. Sometimes the news might be about a famous singer or a sports person, a rich businessman and the new yacht they've bought, or about politicians making important decisions. There's a lot of news, and sometimes it can feel like the news is telling you everything you need to know. But maybe your idea of what the world is like is made up of all those things that you've seen. But there's something really strange about the news that our book, Big Ideas for Curious Minds, tells us about. You see, it tells us there's something strange because the news actually misses out nearly everything. It's funny, isn't it? There wasn't a story about the other day when you had a really good time video calling your gran, was there? I didn't hear that on the television. There wasn't a radio item about the great cake that your brother made for your mum when it was her birthday last week. And there certainly wasn't anything on the news on the other night on the funny thing your dad said while you were having tea, or how lovely it is when someone reads you a story, because there are so many great things that happen in life that's not in the news, and that's just in your life. The same sorts of things are happening all over the world for everyone. For example, there might be two friends in Singapore. And they fell out, they had an argument, and then they made up and they got back together again. We didn't hear about that, did we? How about the girl in South Africa who lost her trousers? Her mum had put them in the laundry, so she found them again. We didn't hear about that either. And there's a cat in Madrid who spent yesterday afternoon in a lovely sunny spot on a windowsill having a perfect time. We didn't hear about that either, did we? There's billions of things like this that happened every single day, and none of them were in the news, were they? If they were, you'd get a very different and maybe more correct picture of what the world is like. These kinds of stories, they don't get in the news because only stories that are unusual or shocking or really, really big get in the news. Most things that happen in the world aren't like that at all. The news tends to concentrate on the bad things, to keep people informed and to keep them interested. And if we watch a lot of news, we can begin to feel like the world is a bit awful. It's just as well we don't make a newscast of everything bad that happens to us in the day. Imagine it's the end of a normal school day and you come out and you make a video of the terrible things that happened to you that day. Maybe your friend didn't talk to you at playtime, or you didn't have your favourite sandwich at lunchtime, and then at the end of the day your mum was 3 minutes late and you didn't know whether she was going to turn up. If you made a video of those things, your mum or dad or your carer at home would have a completely wrong picture of what your day was actually like, when it was filled with fun and normal happiness. When you watch and read the news, it's really important to remember that it's only showing you a tiny, tiny little part of what's going on in the world. It's not such a bad place because there are billions of good bits. Our philosopher this week is someone called Jacques Derrida. There he is. News. This is his idea. Jacques Derrida was a French philosopher. He lived fairly recently. He lived in 1930 and he died in 2004. He was born in Algeria, which is on the north coast of Africa. And in those days, that part of Africa was still part of France, and he spoke French. He was really keen on football, and originally he wanted to be a footballer. And it's funny because there was another French philosopher called Albert Camus, and he was born in Algeria as well. And they did a lot of work together, and they both really loved football too. Later on in his life, Derrida, he moved to Paris in France to go to university, and he wrote loads and loads of books and became really famous. And in his spare time, he loved playing snooker. He was really fond of cats, and like me, his hair was rather messy. Derrida was very curious about what people say and also what they don't say. The things people keep quiet about or don't want to pay attention to. If he was reading a newspaper, he'd always think about stories that could be in there, but weren't. Why weren't they there? Derrida thought that people often have big reasons why they ignore things. It's not just a mistake. They're not simply forgetting to mention something. They're doing it so they can keep saying something else. So they can pretend. It's the same sometimes with the newspapers and the news. They don't just forget that lots of nice or normal things are going on all the time. They actually want to seem to make the world more difficult or dramatic than it really is. And I think that's really worth thinking about at the moment, because life is very different and it might seem a bit frightening and scary at times, and we hear lots and lots of different things that people are talking about. But don't forget the great things and the happy things that are going on all the time as well. So I think I'm going to put my newspaper away, and what I'm going to go and do now is I'm going to go and bake a lovely lemon cake, and I'm going to have a lovely afternoon with my family, and we're going to do some fun things, and maybe next time I can tell you about those. When I send this message out about the video of the assembly, what I'm going to ask you to do is tell me what you'd like next week's assembly to be on. I'm going to give you 2 choices, and you can send in the choice that you'd like, and next week I'll do assembly on the one that you choose. But for now, cheerio!